Welcome to the Performance Formula with Jody Martins.
So, David, officially welcome to the Performance Formula podcast. It is really awesome meeting you and having you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Stoked to be here and grateful to share some stuff today.
Yeah, maybe just by way of introduction, little short, sharp, sweet, who you are, what you do, so that, if people listen to this podcast, they have a sense of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so I'm David Gilbert, executive coach and author in the process of joining this firm called Novus Global, and gone through my own what I call alchemical journey. And that's my latest book called The Alchemical Journey, as well as a co-author in the book Peak Performance Mindset Tools for Business.
Yeah, and already in that, there's some things that pique my interest, to be honest.
Let's jump in.
So I normally start with this question, right? Seeing that the podcast name is Performance Formula Podcast. And happy for you to go wherever you want with us, right? And then I'll follow along because I think your insights and your angle on performance could be quite unique and could be different from sort of the normal podcast, right? So I'm happy that you guide me. Yeah. And so my question normally to start the podcast is, if there was such a thing as a formula for performance, right? If there was we could write it down on a piece of paper. This is the formula for performance. With all your knowledge, all your experience, all your understanding of human beings and how we get to be at our best, what do you think are some of the things that we should consider adding or making sure that we have within that formula?
Yeah, I love this question. And I know my own definition is constantly evolving. And to cut straight to the point, I would say currently it's what we call full participation at the firm, which is becoming whoever you need to be in order to create the vision. And this can be a macro vision or a micro vision. But that idea of being super intentional with who you are, with the situation or outcome you're committed to creating.
Okay. So just give me a moment here. Don't want to miss anything on my end. Becoming to create the vision. Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because normally people would set a vision. It's like,
yeah.
oh, there's my vision. But this sounds a little bit different, right?
Yeah. Nice catch. This is, the becoming part really stands out, right? If you want to be a peak performer, if we want to kind of collapse the path to get to what you're performing for, first we need the vision. Otherwise, we're just not quite wondering, but just kind of cruising around, right? Or we're just like going off a path somewhere. But first, you have the vision. And it's easy to get caught on the vision and then what we're going to get from the vision. You've probably heard of this model at some point. Another way to say that is what we're going to have, right? If I create this vision, I'll have these things. If I'm the best, I'll have this trophy or whatever the thing is. And what leads to the having? Well, it's the doing, right? So what do we do as like focused on performance? We focus so much on the doing. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to optimize this. Then I got to optimize this. Got to get in the hot tub and then get in the cold bath and then do my breath work and then do my meditation, right? Well, there's a layer underneath, and that is being. So I love that you pointed out, we flip the switch to transform on the deepest layers, the identity, which is being. So it becomes, who do you need to commit to become in order to create the vision at hand? Because I can speak from my own experience, being in the lens, and I'll share at some point kind of the lens of a performer, a high performer, a peak performer, and then a meta performer. This is a different model of meta performance. And it's easy to get focused on, like, if I show up and do my best, this is the outcome I will create, right? This is what's possible for my outcomes. Where going beyond that, it's, if I were to commit to who I need to become, and then to kind of give a little hint, like, and who else I can bring onto this journey, it kind of expands your view of what's possible and opens up new possibilities.
I don't think I've ever seen it like that before. Like the concept of be, do, have is not a new concept to me. it's not something that I'm unfamiliar with, right? And normally I would advise sort of, clients, etc., that I work with to understand that if we place the being first, then it starts alleviating some of the stresses and tensions and things around the doing to get to the having.
Yes.
Or often people define who they are based on the things they do and have, rather than sort of what you're suggesting is, no, we commit to who we need to become.
Yeah.
I love those words. And so the thing that I've never really seen before is sort of that last part that you explained there about how the vision then can expand, right? Because I think if we start with a vision and we just pursue that through the things that we do, and I'm looking at my own life here and I'm going like, yeah, maybe I have this understanding of be, do, have, right? But maybe that's a piece I'm missing, is that if I'm not fully committed to the being part, and I'm also maybe still a little bit stuck in the doing and the having part, then that being part can't have that expansion component, where if you commit to that fully, then maybe there's things that I don't know that can start becoming more real,
Yeah, absolutely. It's partly we can get on the treadmill, right? We can get on the treadmill if we're focused on the doing and the having. We can get on the treadmill of trying to achieve this one thing, and I think we know kind of that hedonic treadmill. It's so easy to get caught into when it comes to performance, and then that can lead to burnout, right? Or overwhelm or exhaustion. And then also to your point, internally, like that creates this expansiveness where we can start to realize internally too, we have patterns that can also put us on a treadmill, right? It's our limiting beliefs or the way that we see life, or emotional patterns, or these, we call them survival needs, just simplifying. We all need to, we all want to feel good. We all want to be right. We all want to be in control. And this is just what it means to be human. Like, we have this biological being that is fighting to survive, and then we have this ego or personality that wants to be right. So by the fact that it wants to be right, we'll put ourselves in these loops, and we're like, what is going on? I'm doing all the things but not getting the results. And it's easy to put ourselves in this small idea of who we think we are, when get to your core and you are this powerful, expansive being, and there's so much resource, especially today. Like, it's one of the greatest times to be alive, and there's so much resource and opportunity, but we just get stuck in our patterns, and that's totally normal.
So how did you come to this understanding?
Yeah, it's been my own journey, of course, but a big catalyst was 2020. My whole, if my mom asked me what I wanted to do as a kid, I grew up on a walnut farm. I was like, own my own business, live by the beach and own my own business.
What a life.
So I had an opportunity. I had a dream job, but got let go in LA. And my wife was like, you know what, we can go back to San Diego. So we did. Spent a couple years, worked for like American Council on Exercise and a little bit of freelance. And then I was like, all right, I got the idea. I started getting really into Joe Dispenza meditations. Like, I'm going to open my business. This idea just came, meditation supply store. Found the perfect spot here in San Diego. And I signed the lease January 2020 for a brick and mortar.
Mortar.
Or there it is. A retail store. So, greatest time in our history to open a brick and mortar store.
Yeah.
Not only that, I had a 2-year-old. I had a newborn due in June 2020, and during that period, I learned a lot. Fast forward, we were due to open, and then the pandemic happened, and all the things. We all got our own story during that time, and it was a year and a half, and I got out. I just didn't get the momentum, and had this vision. I even as a kid, I was selling T-shirts and trademarking T-shirts, and I always had a big vision, and it led me on this path where during that time, I'd say I literally did the High Performance Institute certification. So applying that to myself and starting to take clients through that in 2020, which to me, high performance is, you are almost like in hustle mode, in some regard, and then you also have the, like, you're so focused on the having, right? Like, if I have the business, I'll have this. If I whatever the things are, and it's starts the path, my own path, during this time of starting to learn more about myself, and like learning that, oh, are these the things I really want? You know, what are these unconscious beliefs? And I was aware of limiting beliefs at the time. It was meditation supply store, but there's always the deeper layers, right? The hidden constraints that you're always living into, just the subconscious, like the deepest subconscious patterns. So you're really not really aware. You're just like, you probably got your idea from somebody else. You have this some like blurry vision that you want to open a business, and you go for it. And you keep struggling, and it feels like everything's really hard, and you're just trying to show up and be at your best, but you don't really know how. And then that kind of led, after that, like, I realized being a leader in an organization or of a business isn't my sweet spot, my zone of genius. And it's a whole nother story of how I found out my tattoo sleeve tells the story of alchemy, which for me just meant that one-to-one transformation is my sweet spot. So I had to go do this thing, go for this dream that I thought was it, and have it crash and burn for the new thing to evolve. And then I started, doing training, and I did the full training with Flow Research Collective. So they're big into peak performance, and kind of taking that leap of, one part, understanding that inward journey of understanding your patterns, understanding if there's past experiences that are holding you back because you haven't fully integrated them, or healed those aspects of yourself. And then, as well as, one of the biggest takeaways is getting to know that how your biology works for you, right? If you're somebody, for example, that does better, you get in the zone late at night, well, don't fight your biology, get it to work for you. So if you're somebody who leans into overly doing to the point of burnout consistently, well, your opportunity to find balance is in the being or recovery, right? Or if you're somebody like me who's more creative, and you give me free time and I'm just going to be and design things or come up with like formulas or whatever, well, then I know I have to turn up the fire and lean into more doing to find that sweet spot between the two. And that's really what I'd say a big distinction between peak performances. You really understand yourself on a much deeper level, and you're working with it to find that like sweet spot between discipline and surrender. And then in the last year, had a buddy invite me into this opportunity to go through this meta performance model. And I was like, I thought that's it. I thought it was just, peak performance, and then you're there. And meta performance, the name is meta, not like Facebook, but meta as in metamorphosis. So this is, if you were to get in the perspective of a performer, it's like, how do I show up and get the job done, right? And then the high performer is, how can I show up and do good? And the peak performer is, how can I be the best? So you can visualize, we use this picture of a pyramid, and then there's a pyramid on top, which is the meta performer. And that is, what are we capable of? So really just expanding who you think you are, what you're capable of, as well as what's possible if you have more tools to work effectively with other people. Because this is how we got to the moon, right? It was impossible to land on the moon. Yet we did it. And when we did that, it created so many other things, from healthcare to agriculture to other industries that we didn't even think about, by pursuing this impossible goal and doing it together.
I love those sort of distinctions that you bring, right? And it brings back memories for me, or creates like awareness. Where I come from, South Africa, you have every school, almost every university has a high performance program. And if as soon as you hear the high performance word, you tend to find a gym. That's all it is, really. And there might be a skilled person in that gym that really does their work well with athletes. There might be a person that doesn't know much. That's not necessarily relevant. I think in this conversation, it's more just the idea of as soon as the word high performance gets used, it's like, okay, we do more physically. We're leveling up bodies. Yeah, we're working hard. So I like that where you speak about like it's the hustle mode, and then you get sort of maybe individuals or teams who say, "Oh, we want to be the best in the world. We want to go win things. We want to go lift a trophy. We want to be known as a team who did this, or I want to be known as that person that stood on the podium with that gold medal to be able to say I'm the best in the world." So that's what you define as the peak performance. And then meta performance is like, well, what are we really capable of? And I think I have a friend, and him and I have had a sort of, we do a regular podcast every now and then when we have time to connect. And we've sort of bounced around these ideas too, like what's beyond that? What sits beyond just winning? What sits beyond just the trophy or saying that you're the best, right? And so, like what in your mind is beyond? Other than like what is that?
Well, I love that you bring up athletes because look at that's what we all think about, right? When it comes to high performance and peak performance. And then what happens with athletes? There comes a phase where that chapter of your life is going to end. Unless you're, I don't know, chess or something, right?
Yeah, that's also a sport.
Yeah. So yeah, not knocking on chess, just saying that's one you can keep playing through your whole life, or maybe video games. I don't know. So to acknowledge and like to go into what I would consider more of a truth about like the universe is like we are beings that are always evolving, right? Like we're not the same people that we were when we hopped on this podcast. New insights, new information, new awareness, as well as literally the cells in your body are dying and being reborn. And every 7 years, we have an entire new body. So, like, our identity of who we think we are is always changing and we're always evolving. So, knowing athletes, especially ones who do become the best and do get the trophies, like, that can be one of the most depressing moments is to get the trophy because it's like, then what? Right? But if you're willing to jump into the unknown of the next chapter of your next, I'll just say alchemical journey, right? Your next journey, that is where you have to surrender into the unknown, which we're all terrified of. Our brains want certainty. We want to be right. We want to feel in control. So you have to surrender to this next phase. And I know if you just show up and like rekindle the passion, like you'll find something new to be excited about. Like part of our brains are wired to love novelty, right? So it's a very hard leap, especially if you dedicated your whole life to achieve this one thing, because it's a ego death. It's a whole new chapter in life, and that means closing one chapter and opening a new one, which is not an easy process.
Yeah, as you're speaking there, I'm sort of reminded of this thinking I have that around this sort of stuff that says, like we started this conversation with talking about vision. And so it's like if you set that vision every time, and you're about the hustle, right? If you're in that mode, every time the things you do fall short of your expectation of a step closer to that vision, I think it becomes like an ego death, right? It's not a thing like, or for a lot of people, some people can engage with that and go, it's a failure. I just push again. But I find like the vast majority of people sort of have a frustration, like beating up on themselves, self-talk that doesn't serve them in those moments, right? I'm useless. I'm an idiot. I suck at this, right? Sort of comes up more often than not. And so I think what you're sort of bringing to this conversation and what I'm enjoying is that when we can commit to the being, right? Or maybe like meta performance at that level and more think about what can become and what am I becoming, then it's not saying you're not going to do things, because I think like in the world of sports or anything, you have to do things in order to move the wheel, right? You're not going to roll a stone up a hill if if you don't do anything. You're going to have a great idea. You're going to go sit there and have oh, I have this vision of who I'm becoming. So there is a doing component, but I think what you're suggesting and what I'm understanding is that we learn to come from a different place. We have a different starting point. So instead of the starting point being the doing is what's going to get me there, is to say, hang on, I'm going to need to do a bunch of stuff. But what's more important is who am I becoming in the process? And so I think then we have an understanding from the get-go that the ego is going to go through a bit of a journey, right? It's going to be bumped and it's going to be bruised, and that's actually okay. That's not the thing that must make me frustrated, angry, beat up on myself. It's because I understand that maybe I don't understand it, but you're basically signing up for a process of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
You nailed on the head. You were really intuiting this model, because we call it the vision, right? There's the vision, and then there's reality, and then there's the gap.
Mm.
And if we're so attached to the doing or the having, it's so easy to get wrecked by the process. And how do we start relating to the gap? Because what you're saying, another way to explain what you're saying is the gap starts getting bigger and bigger. You had to fail. You didn't win that game. The gap's now even bigger. And then what do we do? How do we typically respond? There's one of two ways if you just distill it down. Fear, right? Fear it says something about us that we're not worthy, or fear that it's not going to be possible, or whatever the thing is. And to flip the switch by focusing on who you need to be. And we're not being literal. It's not like go sit and meditate and you're going to win the games, right? But if you're committed to being the best during a training session, or committed to giving your all, or if the vision, whatever the vision is, like that is the boss, then you can relate to the gap in love, because exactly what you said, it becomes a journey of becoming. And if you can really ground into that, I mean, I still got my moments, right? We're also human and we want to
We all
steer,
do.
we're driven. But when you can really ground into, oh, this is a game of becoming, and with enough dedication to becoming, like it's eventually gonna, I'm gonna create results from that. You can kind of loosen your grip on that ego wanting that so bad, that would remove the resistance that will help you get there faster.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you say? And I'm going to ask this question from a personal perspective, right? What do you say about, or how does this fit into your thinking? Somebody who doesn't have a vision necessarily of what they want to achieve. So for me personally, like for a long period of time in my life, I held some visions, right, of things up there in the sky. Like, oh, I want to be this coach. I want to work with this team, or, like the having sort of stuff, the doing, having stuff, to the point where like my life would be miserable. My day in and day out life would be absolutely miserable because I would see that gap get bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. And so I got to a point where I said, right, I don't want those things in my life anymore. I don't want these visions that pull on me. I'm going to break them down. And that was not an easy process, right? That's like giving up internally. And I don't know if this is like the alchemy journey that you referred to, right? And you can happily say if there's more to it. But to me personally, it was like giving up the idea, the identity of who I am when I have that vision, right? So it was almost like unbecoming something, because I realized these visions are making me, my day in, day out life is a misery. It's like just wake up, see the size of this gap, be depressed. Not to the point where I needed medication, but be unhappy is maybe a better word. Be unhappy with my life, unhappy with where I'm going, not seeing that I'm, and then every time somebody else gets a job and I don't get the job, it's like a freak out on the inside. Sometimes on the outside too.
Yeah.
And so slowly for me, it was a case of removing those things, saying, well, these don't serve me, right? That well. And so I wonder at times with athletes or human beings out there is how many visions do we carry with us that's actually not good for us? And I, if I'm perfectly honest, right now in this immediate moment, I don't have a vision, which at times is frustrating, right? It's not like I have that thing anymore, because it felt like that took about 10 years for me to break down. It's saying goodbye to things. It's saying thank you and being grateful for things that they did in your life and the purpose that they serve, but no longer doing that anymore. And so you talk about deeper, I feel like it's like an onion. We peel layers off, right? It's like, okay, there's a next layer of the onion. Here we go, next layer of the onion. And to me, it's a slow process. I'm sure other people can go through it a bit quicker, but to me, it's sort of like which is also frustrating at times. But I love what you said. It's like you sign up, you're on this path. So I don't know if there's a question in there really, but like, what's your sort of sense about that? Leaving visions behind, and not holding them there as the be all and end all of your life.
Yeah. Well, evolution, and then you literally described the first couple of chapters of the alchemical journey.
Wow. Okay.
Like it literally starts with the hero getting this imitation. It's like a physical envelope, and like finds this golden imitation, and like it just sparks something. You should almost say is like to bring it to real life, it's like that vision of like something, right? And then what happens? We have to go back to work. We have to get back and we're in survival mode or whatever it is. We're just in the routine, the mundane of life. And we keep going and we keep going, and like that, there's that vision there, and we see it and can feel it sometimes, and then we get sucked back into life. Yet we're not taking action. And then we're not moving towards this, which I consider like a desire, like something deep in you, like wants to pull you this way, which if you were to expand out really quick for a second, like the spiritual journey, I feel like it's just the carrot on the stick. So finally what happens? You make a vow, right? You have enough pain. Like, I can't keep living like this. I have to go get after it. And you make almost like a subconscious, sometimes it's conscious, like vow, like I'm going to go for it. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to step into the unknown. And then the hero, like after making that, like leaps into the unknown, kind of chasing, thinking it's going to be this vision of this person, but along the journey, uncover the beliefs, which ones are worth holding on to, which ones are really me, how do we let that go? Okay, how do we open up the key to our heart and like realize what, if we were just coming from love, for ourselves in the future, is it actually fear that was driving us in that vision? As it easily could be from society or our parents or like what, we've been in survival mode maybe our whole life, and that will like help us get out of survival mode. But if you're really in love, and then to give a little hint, like if you're in a place where you don't know, like what could you do more of the mindset of a kid, right? Where we just experiment and like follow passion, and then that kind of like kindles into purpose or a new vision. And then from there, getting to know like the different parts that make you up, as well as what is your biggest fear in life. And if you can bring that fear, in the book it's a big dragon, and if you can open up your heart to that dragon, then that fear isn't running the show anymore. And then like this vision is coming from your unique kind of heart, I guess, right? Your unique passion, and then ground into that and declare that you're a new person. So there's also what happens too, which can be kind of a similar place. I know that was me like a little over a year ago, a place where like you're like, I'm living my dream, right? Kind of like the athlete, almost like that, getting a trophy, and it's like, now what? And like, am I ready for the next vision? Am I not ready? I don't know. It's pretty awesome here. Like, can I just hang out here for the rest of our life, or the rest of my life? And then like that's the thoughts that at least started to pop in my head. But sometimes there's chapters, like big picture view, where you just surrender. And sometimes you have, it's like a masculine way of going through life, and a feminine way of going through. Masculine is like, I have clarity, I have purpose, I am pursuing this thing, get out of my way, world, here I come. And then there's kind of a more feminine approach, which is more receptive and like open, of like, I'm open to new possibilities. I have no idea. And it can be really hard to be a performer mindset not stuck, but in a place where you don't know what's next, because you've had this vision that has led you so far. And it's kind of like that in between chapters, which, I don't know, some guys want to go live in the mountains and be a monk, right? And what are they doing? They're full surrender to every moment. And it's just kind of another way of navigating. But in my own experience, surrendering, and then also like little flashes of insight would pop up, and then following that, and then trying some things that weren't really it. And then even though other people said keep doing that because that will lead to some really good result, but my intuition was like, no, it's really off. And I cut that out, and that created space. So here's a formula, like space for grace or space for possibility. And then that's when like the new opportunity to go through this meta performance model and then learn about the firm that joining right now, like came out of nowhere. And I believe it's because I created this space and just kind of allowed, kind of followed the passion, kind of like a kid.
Mm. Yeah, I love that you've said it twice now, this idea of being like a kid. I think we're all kids at heart. And part of what you speak about, and I don't know necessarily about these things, but there's people that says you've got to take care of like the child within you, or I know there's practices around that. Some of this stuff can at times be seen, like if I think of that, to me, some of it might become a bit woo-woo, right? About a bit wishy-washy, like people can pull this into sort of weird places. Um, I'm fascinated with it all, right? I'm curious about it all. I don't know if I believe it all and think that it's all true, but I like this idea of, and I think it's great advice, right, to anybody out there, because I have this presupposition that I was taught in my studies, and it says if you get serious, you get stupid. And so that idea of space and sort of giving yourself some time to actually sit back from an athletic point of view, we know that recovery is actually super important. And what's recovery? At times it can be active where you go for a walk, but if you go for a walk, it's like breathing space. Your mind can wander a bit, it can maybe put some things together. And so what you're suggesting is like this idea of being childlike in that approach, being curious, being more playful with things, to not get too serious, can then allow us to find the next thing. That's what I'm sort of hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are do want to know how to get into flow, right? Because that's the ultimate state of
Yeah,
consciousness where we feel
yeah.
like we perform at our best.
Don't we
So
all, eh? In the world of sports, it's such a, well, it's not something that gets spoken about a lot, but I think at a whether it's conscious or not conscious level, everybody's chasing that. Everybody wants to walk onto the field and be their best every single time and let the game feel easy, have that freedom, have that focus in place, not get distracted, like be locked in. I think it's like, I always call it the Holy Grail, right? Everybody's searching for it, but so few find it regularly and consistently. So it would be great to know if there's anything we can do to get closer to that.
yeah, and from this is not where you're going to hear much elsewhere. So just to share kind of this perspective of, who do you think is going to perform better? This let's just say adult for an example, an adult who's showing up and holding on to, oh, I got to perform because we lost these other games. I'm pissed at myself that I dropped the ball on this one instance, and I got these other things I got to take care of, but I just got to focus. Okay, we're just going to show up. We have to win this because if we don't win this, I'm going to get knocked and yada yada yada. I'm going to be back on the bench, right? Versus just the kid like attitude of like, ooh, this is a brand new game. Not saying like you show up like this, but just like the energy signature kind of, right? Like, ooh, this is a brand new game. Ooh, I love this game. Like, I'm just gonna show up and we're gonna have fun and we're gonna play and like not be holding on to the past, like fully just in the present moment, tapped into passion. And that passion is in alignment with purpose of why you're there. And then it's this new novelty of letting go everything else so that you can drop into the zone during the game. So you could see it's same with the world's highest performers. Like you can be as disciplined and regimen and do all the biohacking or whatever the things to be in a peak state of performance. But if there's somebody who's just wildly passionate about what they do, they have a whole nother energy reserve that just the person who's showing up to get the job done because it's going to create a lot of money for their family, like they don't have access to that much passion, which we kind of talked about relating to the gap in love, right? That other person would have, and they can just keep doing all these things because they're able to tap into this limitless energy.
Yeah, I love that. I you know, I think when you start talking with athletes about energy, it can, like, that would often be, okay, well, hang on. This is getting it, because it's something that we cannot see. There's no tangible for it. It cannot be measured, not really. Maybe there's ways to measure it with sensors and things on the brain. I don't know. I'm assuming there is. Um, but it's not something like if a coach stands in a room in front of people, or an athlete sits in a change room, or is at a training session, that you can measure just there on the spot, right? You can maybe attach certain behaviors to it, but then people can mimic those behaviors and not necessarily have that energy, right? Have that thing. How would you know that you've got it? Like, what is the, like, if you think of the concept of energy, right? Is
Yeah.
it just sort of a mindset to you? Is it a state? Is it a, I don't know.
Yeah. So I'll touch on a couple things. One, I just want to share, and we'll come right back to that. Like Stephen Cutler, who started the Flow Research Collective, big into peak performance. He said if you have a peak performance problem, look at spiritual practices, or if you have spiritual problem, just kind of stuckness, look at peak performance practices. So one part energy I think about, and drawing from my own experience of something like Joe Dispenza, right? Who's really, it's how to use meditation to get in a state of being, to get expansive and coherence with your mind and heart, and then get into the state of being that's attached to the vision that you want. And the other, the simple but not easy is that you always have a conscious choice to how you relate to the gap. And it's so easy it's a very subtle distinction, and I'm starting to learn by feeling into this more and more. When I'm in the energy or like the current of like the thrill or the possibility or the expansiveness of living the vision as if it's already here, versus focusing on the gap and like what's going on right in this moment. So I know for myself, and it can be really hard, but like at any moment, you do have the choice to consciously choose what you're committed to, right? My coach would constantly ask me, like, how are you relating to the gap right now? Is that how you want to be committed to it? I'm like, I do.
Yeah.
It's like hurts right now. Like I'm like, I don't even know where to go next. Like I'm just feeling despair. But you ultimately do have a choice if you want to relate to it in love, and you can feel into that vision as if it's already here and use that energy to be your state now. Because if you're to go spiritual for a moment, like right back to where we started, like we think creating the experience and then having that experience is going to give the feelings, but we can close our eyes and visualize. It's really powerful if you're an athlete, right? And you can have that experience and then go create that experience after having that experience.
Yeah. The way I see this right now, and I like that, this is why I have these conversations, right? With everybody, is because it shifts my perspective of things. Or I'm the kind of person, like, I create my own little models in my head to have understanding. So since we've been speaking about this gap throughout this conversation, whenever you speak, it's like this model is developing in my head where I see one mountain, I see another mountain, a higher one because we want to get there, and I see a bridge, like, that we're busy building across the gap. And so where my thinking is at this point in time, and you can tell me if it's off in terms of your understanding, but I'm seeing like the high performance athlete would be the one that's physically building the bridge. Like, what's my next step kind of attitude, right? Like, what's just the next thing I have to do to build this bridge to get to that vision? Okay. The peak performance person is almost saying, well, how do we build the best bridge? Like, how do we build the best freaking bridge to get there? Where the meta performance says it's not really about the bridge. The bridge will build itself if I can really just tap into that thing that's on the top of the mountain and who's the person that's standing there. And then sort of naturally from that, letting the building of the bridge build, because you're on that path. And so I've often seen visions as the thing that just lights the way. That's the purpose of the vision. It's not the thing that you're trying to achieve necessarily. The vision is the thing that lights the way. Okay, you're on this path. You're walking in my direction. You're journeying towards me. I think the distinction you've added for me, that what it is that it's about who is the person that's standing in the light of that shining light, and how is that person becoming the one that's getting closer and closer and closer. Where the person that sits and sort of thinks, okay, well, I'm just building the next step, the next step, the next step. I think, like in the way of my metaphor, we're like turning our heads down, and so we're not really connected anymore with the thing that's up at the top there, versus saying, let's connect with that thing. That's what I'm hearing, right? Let's connect with that, whatever that is. Now, I haven't necessarily gone through a full Joe Dispenza program, but I understand his theory. I've read some of his books, done some of his sort of meditations that's available. And my experience with that has been like, you feel that in your body. You feel a physical difference. Like you do not feel exactly the same. And so my sort of summary that I wrote for me, it takes work to become. It's not something that you can just wake up every day and go, there's the vision. Okay, great. I'm going to become that person. Like by way of your explanation, it's sort of just reminded, like it takes work. It takes the time to go sit through an hour, however long some of those meditations are, right? Fairly regularly. I did a 10-day silent retreat. In that, we learned how to meditate because I was fascinated by the idea. And they suggested you do that 2 hours every day. I'll be honest, I don't. I use it in bite-sized pieces sometimes as and when needed rather than as maintenance. But, like it takes work. It takes work to be in that constant connection because life throws so many things at us that wants to just pull us back to just building the bridge,
Yes, I love that metaphor. I haven't seen it visualized like that. I absolutely love it, and I would add to it and like mind people, if you sign up for that meta performance, it's a summitless peak, right? So there's that one vision of you, and then there's the next vision of you, and there's the next vision of you, and then like how you beautifully illustrated, like you get so sucked in building your bridge, and then also what's capable if you look up and there's like other people building bridges, and you're like, hey, what if we build bridges together? What would that bridge be like? And you're like, I don't know. Let's find out.
Let's find out.
And if you're committed to growth, because that's really what we're talking about here, you're going to go on many evolutions of your own alchemical journey. And guess what? Yes, you're talking about the pain of transformation. So this is where one of the questions is, when you have that thrilling life vision that's pulling you forward right now, are you willing to pay the price to sacrifice who you are now in order who you need to become? And that is where growth can feel like pain, right? You're constantly evolving who you think you are. And if you're really committed to becoming whoever you need to be in order to create the vision, guess what? You're going to get to know your blind spots. You're going to get to know where you like to feel comfortable. You're going to get to know where you want to be right, and maybe you aren't right. Maybe it's you have been doing something not the way you think you've been doing things, right? Or you want to be certain before you take that leap, and that's why you don't want to take the leap. Well, you're going to have to take the leap without being certain. So it's just this constant evolution, but if you're committed to growth, then it's always just getting a little bit outside your comfort zone. And that's, to come back, one of the key areas where so many people get stuck, even with something like transforming limiting beliefs, right? Because you either have the fear of pain or the pain of fear. Of what's on the other side. But if you can practice just getting a little bit uncomfortable or saying something a little bit hard to say, if you like to avoid confrontation, or taking a little extra space for yourself, if you're always working really hard, like whatever that opportunity for you that feels totally foreign, do that day by day, and you will be becoming that version of yourself.
Sure. David, if there's anything that you thought that you and I would discuss that we haven't, what would that be? What's still missing in this conversation?
I touched on it briefly, and then this goes for if you want to maximize flow, understand you have to have energy for flow. And I know this is funny because as athletes and like certain people who, we talked about spiritual practices, like don't think so much about energy. It's like, hey, dummy, if you put on X-ray glasses, what is the universe? It's energy.
Yeah.
So if you want to perform at your best consistently and perform beyond what you think you're capable of, but what's going to be one of the most important resources? Energy. So being aware of things that energize you and things that drain you, if you really want to simplify this, and then being aware of things that empower you and things that disempower you. Like there's no right or wrong beliefs, for example, right? Is this empowering you towards your vision or not? And then when it comes to flow, understanding this formula, and I'm sure you know it already, but stress plus rest equals growth. So I described it in a little bit of a different lens of masculine and feminine, and some people were like, what the hell are you talking about, David? This is just the same thing, right? Stress or productivity plus rest or recovery equal the formula for growth. So if you want to maximize flow and you lean into productivity, well, that's when recovery becomes just as important as productivity because you need that energy to sustainably stay at an ultimate state of performance, right? So learning how to like just for example, uh, sleep is actually one of the greatest peak performance states because that's when we get the most recovery. So if you can really learn how to bring those into balance, same with space to be creative or follow your passion, right? And then discipline to just do the things you need to go do to life and create money or whatever the thing is. Finding that sweet spot is where you can really start to excel and feel in flow in life.
Yeah, I can't say that I know that formula. I will certainly remember that because um, I somehow in a weird way I'm geared to that helps my understanding to know that stress plus rest equals growth. And so I see many people not rest well. What would be for a lot of athletes, it would be very easy to do. For a lot of business executives, I'm assuming it's similar, right? Easy to do, especially if they have a bit of passion towards something. Like I'll wake up and just get going with that and do it and go sleep. But what does rest look like? What is that? Is it just sleep, or is there more to that to do that effectively and efficiently?
Yeah, I mean that's where active recovery is so important and downtime. To stack on nowadays, like we all have devices that their number one goal is to suck as much attention and energy out of us as possible. So active recovery practice. You said before, just going for a walk and like focusing on your breath or the sun hitting your skin or just letting your mind wander, right? The things that you hear a lot now about, hot ice baths and saunas or like yoga or light stretching, or I live by the beach and doing a beach walk, or like what was that creative thing that you used to do as a kid? Because guess what? That's going to get you into a flow state, right? Playing soccer or like graphic design will drop me into a flow state. So by getting access to a flow state consistently, the more flow you get, the more flow you get. So you can actually do the things that you love and make you feel alive, and you lose time when you go do them. Like you can make that a priority in your schedule as literally recharging your battery so that you can get more flow in other areas of life. So it comes back to being like a kid, like go do the things you love to do just for the sake of doing them, and you think you're wasting time, but by creating space to fill up your tank, that's when you can start to tap into a whole nother level of consistent energy. So space, like today we love to optimize our calendar, and like one of the big things learned of with Flow Research Collective is what they call calendar surrender, which means there's also a start time and a stop time. And if you can even like lessen that by 20%, so that you have to put the pressure to focus and do more during that window. And then when you're done. And that's when you go right into active recovery and give yourself space to recharge for the next day.
You know, one of the most, I suppose, most productive people on this planet at this point in time is Elon Musk. And I would imagine that he gets into flow fairly regularly. If you think of everything that he's got on his plate, yet he is known to play video games. You know, and so I think that puts it into perspective for me, is saying, okay, here's a person that's like a shining example of somebody that's uber productive, right? And if you think of your meta performance, he's most probably operating at that level because he's not building the rocket himself. He's not designing the next Tesla all by himself. He's working with other people, and what can we achieve together? Yet he has time to go play a video game.
Yeah.
You know,
I would agree 100%. Look at that.
Yeah.
There's a great, that's a perfect example. And then he's also working with the team. And then I'm sure he's highly precise about where he leverages his.
He's very intentional, apparently.
Yeah.
Very, very intentional. That's what I pick up from it, based on he has 5-minute interviews with all his employees, and he wants to know, like, where you at, what you're busy with, what have you done in the last week? Like,
Yeah.
You know, I think if you have that, and I'm sure he's applying that to himself in some way, right? I don't think he's expecting that standard from others, and he's not living it himself.
Yeah. And we can apply this like business, right? It's what's that activity that if you get precise, that high leverage activity that is going to create the result. Right? Same with athletes. And we know with like somebody like Kobe Bryant was up at 4:30 a.m. And what was he doing at 4:30 a.m.? Like the foundational practices first.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you have the foundation, and then it's where's your gap currently, right? What gap are you trying to fill? It's like, for me, like coaching ability, like where's my gap in the coaching ability that I'm trying to fulfill right now? And then you're laser focused on that while executing on the foundations, while also doing the things that make you feel alive. Because when you have that joyful, childlike energy, once again, like you just have this other tank, this other energy tank.
Yeah. Sure, David, I've loved this conversation, and thanks to you and for your time. If people have listened to this and they want to reach out to you, connect with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can go to davidggilbert.com, Gilbert. And I also have the book, The Alchemical Journey, The Ultimate Quest for Inner Gold, now available on Amazon.
Awesome. I will make sure that the links to both of those are in the show notes. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. I love diving into this stuff, and man, you're really intuitive with the formulas, and I'm excited to see how these insights all percolate and create something new for you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.